election headquarters. This is Texoma Politics Now.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Nicholas Kwolek. Well, as 2018 comes to a close, we're going to take a look back at the political headlines that impacted you from right here at home to our nation's capital. And that's where we start this morning with NBC political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Todd. Chuck, thanks for joining us.
Happy to do so, Nick.
Well, a lot has happened over the last year. Chuck, what is the biggest political story of 2018?
Well, I think you have to say it's the midterms, pure and simple. When you look at it big picture wise, this is the first time voters have been able to respond in some ways to the Trump era. And it was the first major political electoral setback, I'd say in a big way, to President Trump. You have Democrats now taking over the House of Representatives. So it is hard to find, there's been a lot of big stories, and it feels like every day there's something unprecedented that comes out of Washington. But when you look at this with that one-year perspective, the midterms, obviously, and what it was, highest turnout ever. Biggest gain for the Democrats in the House since the Watergate election. So even the results of them were historic as well.
And in 2018, what do you think are some of the biggest successes and failures of the Trump presidency?
Well, I think if you would look at it through the perspective of the president, I think it's the fact that he began the year trying to get his border wall, and he ended the year failing to get his border wall. And I think it has been the president, I would say on the unsuccessful part, the president's struggle, if you will, to somehow build a coalition bigger than his own base to support his views on immigration. I would say that the best aspect of his year is the fact that he does have control of the Republican Party. The Republican Party, and he showed it. Nobody makes a move politically in the United States Congress on the Republican side of the aisle without gauging to see how popular President Trump is in their district. It's an important shift because now President Trump has more sway over the party, even at a time when many Republicans in Capitol Hill wish he didn't. And
a lot of what happens next year will then translate to 2020. Looking ahead, who will be some Democratic front runners coming forward in 2019, do you think?
Look, I think that what's ironic here, and since we're talking here in Texas, it is Beto O'Rourke that is basically the first shoe that we're all waiting to drop. Will he or won't he? In many ways, this young congressman who failed to win a Senate seat in Texas in 2018, but stunned so many of us by coming as close as he did to upsetting Ted Cruz, he really is sort of the flavor of the month, but he might be sort of the flavor of the moment in a way that just trounces everybody else that wants to run. So really, until we find out, Beto O'Rourke, he has frozen the entire Democratic field from Joe Biden to Elizabeth Warren to anybody else who wants to run. As soon as we know what he's going to do, that's going to tell us what direction I think the 2020 race takes.
And speaking of knowing who somebody's going to do, what do you think is going to happen with the Mueller investigation?
Well, look, I think that the way the president's year ended, with more investigations opening up, not just Mueller, but you have additional investigations on a state level in New York and Maryland, and on a federal level also in New York and Virginia. If you look at what happened with Jim Mattis's resignation from the Pentagon, I think the question is, of 2019 when it comes to Mueller, how much patience do Senate Republicans have? The House Democrats will be able to impeach the president whenever they choose to do so. My guess is if they find him that he's committed impeachable offenses, they'll also check to see are there the votes to oust him in the Senate. How the Senate Republicans and that relationship holds up between President Trump will tell us whether he can politically survive, whether it's the Mueller probe or even the 2020 reelect.
And finally, Chuck, in your crystal ball, what do you see ahead for next year?
As chaotic as 2018 was, whatever it is, times it by 5. That's the thing we've learned in the Trump era. I think you will see more combative ways, perhaps more struggles to see government work in Washington, because I don't think the president has fully comprehended the power Democrats now have or will have when they take over the House. And that relationship is going to define all of Washington for the next 2 years.
Chuck, Todd, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
You got it, Nick.